Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's web seminar, Enablement and Efficiency for Remote Testing Teams, sponsored by Kobiton and featuring their CTO, Frank Moyer, as our speaker today. I'm your host from TechWell, Beth Romanek. Thank you for joining us. Before I hand it over to our speaker, let me explain this console you see in front of you. All three panels on your screen can be moved around and resized. At the bottom of your console, you'll also see a widget toolbar. By clicking the Handouts widget in the middle, the one that looks like two pieces of paper, you can download a PDF of the speaker's slides. If you have any technical issues, please let us know by typing in the Questions and Answers panel on the left. This is also how you submit questions. We will have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to ask the speaker questions throughout the presentation. And finally, for your best viewing experience, please close any unnecessary applications you have running in the background. We are recording this web seminar and we will make it available to watch on demand. Once the recording is ready, we'll send you an email with instructions about how you can watch the presentation. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Frank Moyer. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you very much. This is Frank Moyer. I am CTO, as mentioned, of Kobiton. And we are going to talk through enablement and efficiency of remote testing teams. Before I get started on the topic, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Kobiton and for those of you who have not heard of us. So we come from a group of testing founders who founded QA Symphony, the company that made Q-Test. KMS Technology is the services business that does a lot of testing offshore in Vietnam. They have over 1,000 employees based in Vietnam. In addition to Kobiton, they have a testing platform for web called Catalan. We have offices in Atlanta and in Vietnam, and we provide mobile testers the ability to access mobile devices. We have over 200 mobile devices in our lab, as well as 2,000 plus devices hosted by customers in private configuration. And we provide the access to those devices as well as robust information about what happened when you ran that test. So log files, screenshots, video, and across a variety of device types, both Android and iOS. I thought I'd start this off by going through a quote. COVID-19 is like a rehab intervention that breaks the addictive hold of normality. And this was a great blog post written by Charles Eisenstein called The Coronation. And to interrupt a habit is to make it visible. It's to turn it from a compulsion to a choice. And when this crisis subsides, and we know it will subside, we have to ask whether we want to return to the normal that we saw prior to this crisis, or whether there might be something better on the other side that we've seen that breaks our normal routines, that brings us to a better future. And so the changes that have been imposed in this terrible and disruptive disease may not be temporary at all. Even if we control the measures to protect against this threat of infectious disease, we still are going to be forced into a state of fear and uncertainty about when the next wave comes, or whether there's a COVID-20 or COVID-21. And today I'm going to discuss what this new normal looks like for the testing community, and specifically around remote testing and how some organizations that we have worked with over the years have established their businesses to handle remote testing. For many, this concept of remote testing is not new. It's been around for years. They've been maybe testing offshore in India or in Vietnam or some other country. But in order to achieve true remote testing effectiveness, it requires a culture shift, a change in systems and processes, and an organization structure that supports remote testing. So as testers, we've been thrust into remote working. As of the first week in April, the number of U.S. knowledge workers working from home was double as compared to the first week in March. You can see this graph that shows workers, knowledge workers, testers are part of that, comprise 74% of the U.S. workforce. And that growth in numbers of people working remotely has been driven by shelter-in-place orders and a general trend towards companies asking their employees when possible to work from home. But no doubt that COVID-19 caught us all unprepared. There is a report published before COVID-19 back in November of 2019 by Zapier, and they found that 31% of knowledge workers would like to work remotely, but their company doesn't allow it. And now we have far exceeded those limitations imposed by companies. 35% on that same report, 35% want to work from home because they feel like they're more productive from home. So the question is, where will we be on this graph when testers are able to return to work? Are we going to be back to where we were before? But I think history has shown that crises and disaster often set the stage for change. In the flu epidemic of 1918, a lot of great things came out of that, including the creation of the National Health Services for many of the European countries. So in early March, our CEO, Kevin Lee, announced that we were all going to start working from home due to the COVID-19 risks. And I remember that time very well because we knew there was a storm coming and we wanted to do everything we could to help the testing community in any way we could. And we realized that we had software that could help testers access their mobile devices to test remotely. But so what we did was within a few days, we mobilized and launched a remote hands initiative that allowed anyone, and I'll talk more about this later, but it allowed anyone of our to provide we were going to provide testers the remote access to shared devices that before COVID-19, they would share around the office. And now, these devices were no longer available because everyone's working from home. So Kobiton provides a software that allows those people to access those devices remotely. And, anyone can host one of those set of devices from their home and then share that amongst their team. So we decided to give it to the testing community free of charge during this pandemic to help testers get over something that came along very unplanned. And we had an international airline prospect that had sent their testers home, and we just told them to have at it with Kobiton. They had 20 devices up and running in 2 hours, so they can continue working from home. But like I said, it caught us all off guard. And when I look at, will there be a new normal for testers? I start to ask the questions, can your company make the changes necessary to support the remote work? Has the experience of remote working been a good one? In this time that we're all working from home, has it been a good experience for management and the employees? And are all the processes in place, and are the right collaboration and tools in place to support remote testing? You can go on to the next slide. So one thing is for certain, and that is the open office space trend that we've been seeing over the past 20 years is going to take a backseat to prioritize good office hygiene and social distancing. The 6-foot space social distancing with cubicles is, from all the reports I've read, it's going to throw us back to the 1990s office space. We're likely to have doors that automatically open so you don't have to touch handles. Chairs will be made with the latest antibacterial fabric, and UV lighting will be used overnight in order to kill as much bacteria as possible. And a lot of these trends are already occurring before the pandemic, but the pandemic has forced it into this new world of accelerating. Go ahead, and Alex. So we have so we've all of these factors that I just went through have led to a rising cost of office space, including the delays in getting office space prepared for employees, returning and respecting the social distancing guidelines. The next is, in addition to increased office space with employees per square foot, the corporate attorneys are beginning to realize the increased liability associated with keeping the workspace clean and safe from germs. Walmart is the defendant of one of the first COVID-19 lawsuits. The lawsuit was filed by a 15-year Walmart veteran for negligent and wrongful death. And there are thousands of filed complaints under OSHA, the general duty clause, which requires the employers to furnish to each of his employees employment and a place of employment which are free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to his employee. So, we now have this new, we always thought it was, you're going to fall off the rules. And now it's something that we see almost commonplace in our world today. And then the other factor is going to be morale and retention, where previously employees were had to report to work every day, and now they're experiencing the advantages of working remotely. And it's going to become more of an expectation in order to improve safety, morale, and productivity. And I think you'll start to see more and more companies moving towards supporting remote working as a result. And then finally, I think what's going to happen is, for so long, managers were so resistant and executives were resistant to allowing testers to test remotely. And now by being forced into allowing this, management's beginning to realize that it works, and it actually can work well. And so the other side of this, beyond the corporate support, is looking at the employee side and how the employee views remote working. If you could go to the next slide. It's a lot easier from the employee side by not having to be physically in the office. The employees are able to avoid overcrowded public transportation. And if you look at the common meeting room where you've got a group of people who are sitting within 3 or 4 feet from each other, now that goes away by being over Zoom. And so, even in the office settings where people are typically sitting less than 6 feet apart, it's still dangerous for employees to be in the office. A survey conducted, this Zapier survey, was looked at 800 knowledge workers, and they were, some of the main reasons were working remotely. It was outlined below. So if you just click through these, that'd be great. Next one. Yeah, so 48% they liked because saving money. 44% was additional time with family. The 35% felt like it was more productive working from home. And they're an average of 105 hours from other studies done that can be saved over the course of the year, giving employees more free time. Mental health was 29%, and then 23% cited environmental stability. And so all of this together is, the employees have a much greater preference for at least having the option to work from home. Okay. So the other factor when it comes to testing, and specifically testers in mobile, is handing devices around the office is quite unsanitary. In a world, we're trying to touch as few things as possible, and testing groups that we've spoken to are going to start to do more and more to avoid passing phones around the office. We have, in our 200 devices in the data center, we have putting in place to sanitize each of those devices after the administrators touch those devices, to avoid any unplanned transmission of disease. We did a survey on the next slide. We did a survey of 76 mobile testers over the past 2 weeks to get their opinion on what investments they plan on making as they resume business post COVID-19. The number one priority for over 50%, and you can just tap through twice, for over 50% of the respondents was to invest in a culture that embraces what it means to be a remote team. So this is a priority for the testing community. It wasn't about those priority 2 and 3 about systems and tools or efficiency and effectiveness. It was about culture. Now, I think the reason culture was such a high priority was because efficiency and effectiveness will come naturally as a byproduct of having a culture that supports remote working. Systems will naturally become a part of the business in remote working when the culture is nailed. So, what does a remote culture look like? In my mind, it means that even though you can run your tests locally on your laptop, you don't. You run them remotely. You run them as if you were in a remote working environment, even if you are in the office. And you do this so that you can share your virtual test environment with colleagues. You do this so that you can get the results of the test and the recordings and logs and everything that's a part of the test, and that those results can be reviewed and collaborated on. And you do this so that you can show your teammates that you are making the necessary contributions to the success of the team and the company. Trust is a key part of remote working, and having transparency in what gets executed is a critical success factor in making that work. So moving on to the next slide, I sort of look at this as I call it the remote working culture test. And I like to ask a set of questions, 3 questions to challenge organizations on who say they have remote working set up to measure that cultural effectiveness. And I like to use Zoom and versus Google Docs in my comparison. In that comparison, your collaboration approach, if your collaboration approach is more like screen sharing in Zoom, or is it more like users collaborating on a Google Doc? Because this audience is mostly testers, I'll use Kobiton as an example of collaboration, of testing collaboration. So there, you create a test, you run your test, and you have results that can be collaborated on and shared. In the first question I asked is, do the tools support concurrent creation and editing of artifacts? What is the artifact that gets created as a part of Zoom? If anything, it's a recorded call if you record it. And can you collaborate on the creation of that artifact? Absolutely. We'll talk in a few minutes about what that looks like and whether it really passes the test. But in a Google Doc scenario, there have been plenty of cases where I've been in meetings with sitting around a table where everyone's in a Google Doc, where everyone is collaborating while we're sitting face to face. I can't imagine that you would start a Zoom call, even though it's collaboration, to collaborate on if you're just sitting there face to face. And I think in the world of testing, where we are trying to collaborate on tests and the test results, how do we make that effective collaboration? Are we showing somebody the issue with the test execution by sharing your Zoom screen, or are you sharing a video of the results that can be used by anybody? And the second question I ask is, are the tools used regardless of whether you're in the office or remote? And I think there are some good examples of this where, like the case of Slack, people use Slack whether they're in the office, right next to each other. Google Docs is another example. Zoom, you just wouldn't use it whether you're in the office. When you're in the office, you're only going to use it, or traditionally going to use it remotely. And the same thing goes with testing. Are the tools that you're using supporting, do you use those tools both in the case of working face-to-face or whether you're remote? And then the third question I ask is, are the artifacts created from the collaboration tools discoverable and archivable? And this goes back to the first example of Zoom. Sure, you can create the artifact, but that artifact is not discoverable or archivable, versus a Google Doc that you create as a result is something that is discoverable. And in the case of test results, you have video and log files that can be searched and stored off for forever. So these are the key things that I like to assess when I'm assessing the readiness for or the readiness for an organization. I'd like to talk, when I look at the whether they've achieved the cultural part, I look at a few things based on what we've learned from talking to customers. We had one of our customers has about 1,500 devices in their data center, and their data center is based in India. They have about 100 testers around the clock who are performing manual tests on those 1,500 devices. And what happened on March 8th was they were all sent home to do the remote testing from home. That was not something they had planned, but they were using Kobiton, and Kobiton gave them the ability to perform their tests remotely. There were some things that were unplanned, and we had to respond to. For example, their developers did not have access to those devices when they were remote. So we had to set up a tunneling solution for them to access those devices from their home, the developers, so that so while the testers were being efficient remotely, the developers were not. So when I look at this graph, I look at it from two perspectives. Along the horizontal, I look at it from enablement and efficiency. And then along the vertical, I look at it in terms of role. And I think about the manual tester, the automation engineer, and the QA manager. And what I'm going to talk through briefly is what enablement and efficiency look like for those three roles. So for the manual tester, enablement means remote access to those test environments. Being able to not just access different browser versions for web and different mobile devices for mobile apps, but also, connectivity to those test environments to perform tests. And the systems that will be used, like Jira, to log defects when issues are found. there are quite a few, when I look at this from a readiness perspective, large organizations, many are using companies like Kobiton or Sauce Labs or BrowserStack, but a lot of the mid-sized organizations aren't there yet, and those are the ones who we are working closely with our Remote Hands initiative to give them the ability to access those devices remotely. So going on to the next slide. So we've covered off the manual tester and enablement. Keep going. Next slide. And then when we look at mobile tester when it comes to efficiency, so previous slide, sorry. A lot of this is reliability and speed of the remote interactions with real mobile devices and with different browsers, as well as the speed and reliability of test environments. Security plays a key role here. Can those testers get access into the test environments for where the test data is for them to perform their tests? It's very common for us to have to set up VPN access or a tunnel access into a test environment where all the data and the servers are for a mobile application. So that means that reliability and speed becomes important. One of the biggest challenges for what we've seen with our customers who have moved into a remote working situation, where previously they were working out of an office with a very fast internet connection, and now they have employees going home, testers going home and working from home with a slower bandwidth. They need to make sure that the tests are performed efficiently. And one of our core competencies at Kobiton is the ability to make those tests as fast as possible. So we typically get less than 200 milliseconds in delay, which is unnoticeable when you're doing your test through a browser. Okay, move on. And then going on to the automation engineer is a lot easier. When you just like developers, a lot of them are able to work remotely because they have a lot of their environment set up locally. That means that they don't have the challenges around connectivity because they have what they need local, and they're able to do all their unit testing locally. So automation engineers are much the same way. They can write a lot of their scripts from their desktop. They typically will need some access to real mobile devices as well in test environments, but they can do a lot of their prep with local emulator environments. Go ahead, move on. Next. So moving on to the QA manager role, really two things. I'm sorry, the previous slide. I want slide 21. So for the manager on enablement, having QA clearly communicate the source of defects with rich environmental information. So, they can, this isn't just about QA, it's also about how does the QA manager and make sure his team passes on to the development team exactly where the defects are coming from. The last thing we want as testers is to be in a position where we can't provide the rich information and testers or developers decide they're going to go off and just do it all themselves. The other part of this is, in addition to communicating the source of defects with rich information, and if you can just tap on that. The other is having being able to monitor test execution progress and device and browser utilization and coverage. So having rich reporting for the manager so that they can communicate what's happening even when his or her team is working remotely. So that's a key part of what the manager in terms of enablement looks like. And then the other part of this is looking at the additional information for remote testers is troubleshooting environmental issues. Like I mentioned, there might be slow network connectivity, and I showed that example of a Wi-Fi. You get it on remote working tools like Zoom, where it says you've got a slow internet connection, or the internet connection you have is unstable. That's very helpful and is required for any tool where you're doing some sort of remote control or remote access to work. And then, I think this is also an opportunity for QA to expand their role in a broader remote working initiatives. I mentioned our client who is expanded to the developer teams, where the developers are now able to access their the physical devices, these 1,500 physical devices, for debugging. It's helping. It's showing the QA team as leadership amongst the organization. And so the last part of this is just the QA manager and efficiency. So there's a great opportunity here for the QA manager to take this as a chance to leverage machine learning testing tools that reduce some of the network requirements or the connectivity requirements, so they can perform autonomously a set of tests. And we've been at Kobiton have been launching some products around this to help testers, manual testers and automation engineers become more efficient and not require them to be connected at all points during the testing workflow. So moving on, as the other part of the survey that we did, and I think this is probably the one of the most insightful results of our survey, is that this showed the percentage of responses that COVID-19 had on different parts of their testing process. And these answers are related to the ones that were immediately disrupted in the QA process. And so you can see, like, team communication, collaboration, sharing data and insights, test case management, all of these were very low, 5% or less. Replicating customer bugs a little bit higher. A lot of that is related to getting access to environments and alignment with other DevOps teams. Also, hovering right around the 5% mark. But the one that really jumps out is this, this last one, which is access to devices. We had over 20% of the respondees said that access to devices for testing immediately disrupted their QA process. So, it is a business continuity issue for the QA team, and something that I think caught a lot of organizations off guard. The final slide I'll just talk through briefly talks about, and then I'll open it up to questions, is also in the survey, the tolerance for sort of what impact has COVID had to QA. And the top three were there's a higher tolerance for bugs in order to get things out faster. Everyone had to take a new approach to prioritizing the sprint, and they have to have centralized metrics and reporting in place. So these are all initiatives that that I think a lot of these companies are going to embrace as they return post COVID-19. So just finishing up before I take questions, I'll go back to this quote by Charles Eisenstein. These changes that we've been working through as testers are in many ways not going to be temporary at all. Even if we are able to protect, we're going to be in this new world, this new normal. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us to challenge the status quo, to extract the greatest value during this period of time, and in order to improve our careers and our lifestyles, and to make better, higher quality products. So thank you very much for the time today, and I will open it up and hand back to Alex for questions.
Okay, first question for you here, I believe is about the services that Kobiton provides. This person wants to know, are you only focused on mobile testing or also web applications?
Yeah, so we do. We focus 100% on mobile. We partner with another company, Catalan, which I mentioned in that early slide, helps does the web application part. But we focus on mobile because we see mobile as very different. You have a lot of complexities with mobile that don't exist for web applications, for browsers. So we have focused, on a very large and growing market, mobile, and we don't have any immediate plans to expand beyond that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Next question here for you. Have there been any other unexpected impacts from COVID-19 that you didn't mention in your presentation?
Yeah, I think that the part that we were all surprised by, we have been at Kobiton, we've been helping customers capture information about their tests and their devices. It's a way for testers to collaborate. We very much look at Kobiton's product as a device lab management product, as well as a collaboration tool. And I got to say, I didn't really see it as much as a remote testing tool, even though that's one of its greatest features. And what this opened my eyes to is just how important this aspect is for business continuity, for testers. We have clients who are delivering mobile-first applications, and those clients are reaping the benefits of using Kobiton, not for all the other value we add, but specifically so that their employees can work from home and continue on with their testing.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Alex, are you saying something?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Here's a question that I think is a common situation for a lot of people. This person says, our company has minimized spending during the COVID-19 crisis. Are there any free tools you can suggest to expand testing?
Sure, yeah. And like I mentioned, when I was going through, we have the Remote Hands Initiative, which allows mobile testers during this pandemic to access their own devices. We are providing that free to the testing community during this time. And also, Catalan is a great product. They have a freemium model and very popular tool. I think they have over 300,000 users right now.
All right, thank you. This person wants to know if you have any plans to support additional regions like South America, Africa, etc.
Yeah, so we support, we can support any region in the world. We have clients that we've launched within 24 hours in different parts of the world. And I just finished up a call with another client that they need their data to be within their country and not leave that country. So we are setting up things over the next few days to support them. So please feel free to reach out to us if you would like to use Kobiton in your country. There is no constraint. One of the greatest assets of our product is the ability to deploy anywhere. It's a huge asset.
Good to know. Thank you. This is another question about Kobiton and its plans for the future. Are you looking into testing for virtual reality, like for Android Unity projects?
Yeah, so we can support that today for manual sessions. When it comes to automation sessions, there is an Appium to Unity plugin that we can work with you on.
Very cool. Thank you. All right, here's a question about the enablement and efficiency matrix that you had up before. This person asks, how can the QA lead and manager handle their own efficiency and productivity? What tools and strategies can the QA lead and manager use to help in these situations for their own motivation and their team's motivation?
That's a great question. So it's, we start to look at the QA lead and manager both as is making sure that their team is effective and efficient, but also, I think this gives an opportunity for the manager and the lead to get more hands-on. One of the most common reasons testers and employees want to work from home is so they have more, they're more productive. And why are they more productive? Because they're not getting disrupted. They're not getting pulled in meetings. When they're messaging with their colleagues, it's asynchronous. It's over Slack or over Skype, and they don't have that constant barrage of interruptions. That gives, I think, the QA manager and the lead an opportunity to go and get more hands-on, to get, I think everyone at home right now over the past month has done something around their house that they've been planning to do for years because they have more time. And this is your opportunity to do that for your organization.
Yeah, I know that's been my situation. Very good point. This is a good question. How has COVID-19 impacted your situation in terms of recruitment?
Yeah, so the environment that we are living in is, it's very sad, not just for the casualties, for the loss of people, and but also for all the people who are currently unemployed. And we're seeing situations where companies are holding off on recruiting. And we're also seeing, some situations where companies are hiring. I think it depends on the industry. Certain industries, like our retail customers, have been hit more. Our airlines customers have been hit more. But there are quite a few of our healthcare companies that are hiring, and our finance companies, our banking, the banks that work with us are also hiring. So, I think it's right now an opportunity, if you are furloughed or if you are in a position where you've lost your job, it's an opportunity to look at a different industry that may not be as vulnerable right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Okay, here's a good question. Are there any types of testing that are not possible to perform remotely?
Yeah, there are. And I think this comes down to security as the biggest factor. We have one of our customers is a consulting company that works closely with the U.S. intelligence agencies, and all of that testing needs to be done in a network that is completely disconnected from the internet. So it's what's referred to as a sneaker net. Anything that gets transmitted between that environment and the internet has to be put on a CD or thumb drive, actually sneakered over to the internet. Now, so there's no way for those testers to access that environment. Kobiton can run in a completely disconnected environment, so we don't need access to. You can run Kobiton locally, completely disconnected from the internet. So that sort of testing, when security is so strict that everything's locked down, that's obviously going to put some constraints around the ability to do remote testing.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. Finally, yes. Do you have any suggestions for how to approach management to suggest remote working for testers when we're all supposed to return to work?
Yeah, I think I think, we're going to make this recording available. I think you should go through and pick apart some of these ideas to work with management to see if coming back from COVID-19, you can make your working environment across your organization a better place to do remote testing. This is an opportunity to change the way we all operate as testers, and to make your lifestyle better, work-life balance better, and the products that you're testing better. So I would encourage you to go and do that.
Yeah, if there's anything good that can come out of this, those are some very good points. Thank you. And I think that was a great question to end on. So that will go ahead and end our presentation for today. I'd like to thank Frank Moyer for his time and Kobiton for sponsoring this web seminar. And of course, a special thank you goes out to all of you in the audience for spending your time with us today. So everyone have a great day, and we hope to see you at a future event.
Thank you very much, Alice.